Welcome back. It's time for another live stream, another book review today, and I had planned to actually talk about this book a long time ago, and I've never had time, which I think is a shame because I think there's a lot of value in this book. And I know there are people who are going to say, well, yeah, of course there's value in a book that it's made by Critical Role, blah, 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 blah. You would say that sort of thing. But no, there are some good things, there's some bad things in this, and I'm going to certainly talk about the things that I think are worthwhile talking about in this particular case. There are many different things that are worthwhile. So rather than thinking that I am going to be biased in this case, I'm not going to be biased. My suggestion to you is grab a drink and some food and settle down, get comfortable, and I'm going to cover this in as much detail as I can. I know this book has been out for a very long time, so as a result that's sort of created a bit of problems because, you know, the excitement around this book is well and truly gone. It hasn't really sort of been on the radar for a long time, and as a result, what are you supposed to do with that? Okay, so I am currently having trouble actually finding this live stream. So maybe YouTube has buried it, and so I can't actually check to see if it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. So I'm having a little bit of trouble trying to find this, which is kind of bizarre because I know it was scheduled as public. It looks like it's listed as public. Oh no, it's gone unlisted. That would explain an awful lot. I didn't put it as unlisted. It's gone unlisted. Why did that happen? Details, chat, enable, no. Live stream mix, no. Monetization, is there. Details, where, how did that happen? Very unfortunate. That would explain a lot. Okay, visibility needs to be public. There we go. That's what we wanted. Oh, now that makes an awful big difference now. I should be able to actually find it, which before I couldn't find anything. Very, very strange. Anyway, now that I've fixed that problem, I was wondering what was going on. But now we've found it, and it's there. And I can check my sound and my video, and then we can get into this. Man, there's one thing I do hate, that particular ad. There's that one ad they play on YouTube all the time, and it's such a drag. Anyway, so we're there. All right, cool. So that means we've got everything working. Okay, all right, for those of you who are wondering what's going on, it looks like we're all good. And I will pull out my earplugs and we'll get on with this. Sorry about the delay, and sorry about the fact that the live stream went unlisted. I did not do that. I put it on public. YouTube keeps fiddling with stuff. I wish they wouldn't do that sort of thing, but they do. Anyway, let's get on with this, shall we? Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. And as it happens, we're talking a little bit about a campaign book from, I would say, Critical Role or Matthew Mercer. So the actual topic is basically Explorer's Guide to Wildemount. Is it a masterpiece? I want to discuss this because I actually think this book does a really good job of laying out a campaign. Whether you like the campaign or you don't like the campaign itself, the campaign world, the book has been done really well, and that's what I like about this book, rather than the fact that, you know, maybe it doesn't sort of suit you. You know, maybe it's not the traditional Dungeons and Dragons campaign books we've seen in the past. But what it does well, and I think it needs to get some support around that and some explanation about what's going on there. So I'm going to do a lot of that today. So sit back, get comfortable, and we will go through all the things that I thought were really impressive about this book. And I have to say, when you lift up this book, when you lift up a book like this and you put it in your hand, it is so heavy. This is a very heavy book. It's got a lot of pages. In fact, I do remember seeing a comment from Chris Perkins saying, Matthew, next time you don't have to put everything in the book. And actually, Matthew has ignored him and put everything in the book. Good on you, Matthew. Good on you, Matthew. That's the way to go. Don't take the shortcuts like Wizards of the Coast likes to do. Okay, so this is a review of Explorer's Guide to Wildemount. It's inspired by the Matthew Mercer's personal campaign world, Exandria, which I don't know an awful lot about. I've read just a little bit. I've watched some of the show and stuff like that. That's from the Critical Role live stream Dungeons & Dragons game. This is actually an excellent, and I would say enormous, reference book. And it includes, of course, your contents table or contents page. It has, much to my surprise, it has a glossary. Of all things to see in a book like this, it has a glossary. I don't know if I've seen a glossary in a Wizards of the Coast book for a very long time. And then it also has, one of my pet peeves with Wizards of the Coast, it actually has an index in the back. So thank you, Matthew. You obviously understand what dungeon masters require, and that is, we need an index so we can actually find stuff, so you can actually find the things you're looking for. Now, in conjunction with the contents page and the index, can you find everything in the book? I wasn't really able to get enough time to establish that myself, because there is so much in this book. So there might be some holes. It might be a little bit hard to find things. I feel like the layout of the book is pretty good. So, things are essentially, if you're talking about a particular area, if you're talking about monsters are in one place. If you're looking for maps, you can find all the maps because they're referenced on the contents page. So that makes a big difference. If you're looking for the world information, the gazetter it's all in one place. So that does make a big difference in terms of navigating through the book. There is, as I said, a list of maps in the contents table with page numbers. And this makes the book really easy to cannibalize. So if you wanted to use this outside of Exandria or Wildemount, you could. And there's lots of pretty good maps there. Some of them are very specific to that world in terms of area maps and locations. There are other maps that are things that you could transplant and put into your own game if you wanted to, if you're making a homebrew of some kind. And there's a variety of different things. I wouldn't say there's a huge amount, but when you look at something like some of the other campaign books, there's not that many books that have lots and lots of maps. Mythic Odyssey of Theros, I would say, is certainly an exception. That's an exception, but that's one of the books that I really, really like. Okay, what about the world lore for Wildemount? Now, I feel like this will appeal more to a Critical Role fan and a Wildemount and Exandria. The lore behind all of that, I think that's a fan thing, but it's not really for me. There's nothing in it that's special as far as I can see, and I've already seen nations at war before. So, now, don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean there isn't some value in it. I don't think it's the world that I would use, personally, if I was running my own game. That doesn't change the fact that Wildemount is exceptionally detailed, and it's also very well laid out, so you can find stuff. So there's nothing wrong with that. In terms of whether it interests me is beside the point. There are far more people who are probably interested in this world than a lot of other books, with the exception of Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. I think that's sort of a bestseller. Although that might be on par, because both of them, I think the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount wound up being a bestseller and sold out pretty fast on Amazon, and Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft also sold out and was a bestseller. I'm pretty sure that's the case. Maybe I'm wrong. You'll let me know if I am. Okay, so what about the Wildemount Gazetter? It is monstrous. I was going through that and looking at what was there, and it's enormous. There's an amazing level of detail. I would say certainly more detail than Wizards of the Coast would normally put into a campaign book. And why? Probably because the lead writer is Matthew Mercer. There are some adventure ideas in there. Now, there's usually, for each area, there's 2 adventure ideas. One that's for sort of low level, and then one that's for any level. So they're not level specific, and they really are just like a paragraph. They're just a kernel of an idea. But the inclusion of that sort of thing is always good in any campaign book. And if it didn't have it there, frankly, I would have given it a down star. I would have given it a thumbs down for for not doing that. But it has, and there's lots of them. And because because the gazetter is so big, there's a lot of story and adventure ideas in there compared to a lot of other campaign books that you might pick up. So that's useful to you. What I was really shocked by, and I can just see the design team at Wizards of the Coast just wigging out when this was presented by Matthew Mercer. I'm sure he's the reason that this has actually happened, and that is every race option that you have in his particular world, okay, that he's created, has been reprinted for this world. It's been reprinted. It doesn't matter what book it was in. All the lore, mechanics have all been reprinted, so you don't have to go and buy other supplements. All you need is the player's handbook, your monster manual, and this thing, and you've pretty much got everything you need. And that's it. I know somebody's going to say, what about the Dungeon Master's Guide? And I'm not going there. Okay, I have issues with the Dungeon Master Guide for Dungeons & Dragons 5e, other than the fact the section on magic items. The rest I don't know about. So what I like about this is it really makes this book far more complete than any other Wizards of the Coast campaign book with regard to something like the race options. Because usually you have to refer to a different book to find it. And because the races are not all in one book, they're scattered throughout multiple supplements, it can be sometimes very hard to get them all in one place in a hardcover book or some sort of paperback. Otherwise you're using digital tools. There's no new races. Okay, so he hasn't tried to create new races, but there are a few new sub-races. I didn't really take to any of the sub-races myself, but then again, often for me, sub-races aren't nearly as interesting as a completely new race. So to make me really interested in something, I'm looking for a completely new race. And I really love races. It's one of the things that I like players to do is play something different, just to see if they can do it. And changing the way they look is just the first step. It's then how do they figure out how to play a completely different race that's totally alien to them. So I love the fact that there's so much input, whether it be reprinted, okay, is beside the point. The fact that it's all in one place does make it significantly easier if you're trying to run this campaign world. Okay, what about the Hollow One? There's been a lot of talk about this. I consider the Hollow One like another option. Really, I just see it as another Dungeon Master tool or option you could use, you might not use, depending on how your players sort of react to the Hollow One. It's a supernatural gift or a character option. Really, it's only an option if your character dies. It fits the campaign setting, and that's why Matthew Mercer has put it in there. It does seem very dark to me and a little bit unappealing in terms of the fact that you're kind of less than what you were. Now, mechanically, okay, outside of the mechanical benefits, because there are mechanical benefits, and certainly they would be something that players would want. And they're quite good, okay? I'm not saying they're bad at all, but I guess the flavour behind them, it kind of feels like a part of the character has been removed. And that's really the intention behind the Hollow One. And I don't feel like the Hollow One is a situation where the player's character can, at some point, eliminate this supernatural gift and restore themselves in some way. It's going to linger with them forever, unless, of course, the Dungeon Master changes things, which, of course, you can. You could do that. That's, entirely up to you. Now, I believe there are 3 backgrounds, and they really didn't interest me at all. But what I will say is that there are multiple variants in here. Matthew has tried to reference any backgrounds that might exist or be used in Wildemount. He's tried to reference them in the book, so you've got some idea of how they would sort of work. What backgrounds he does offer, there is usually multiple background features. There are variants. There's usually at least 3 or 4, which is a lot. Whether I like them or not, that's quite a lot. Did I feel like they were doing anything more than had been done before? Not really. But I do feel like this book does at times suffer from a lack of designer input. And, Matthew Mercer's not a designer of games. So I think he probably struggles a little bit. And I don't think that a lot of this stuff has been play tested or trialed outside of his own group, frankly. So that can create a bit of a problem as well. But when you pick up the book and you look at it, unless you've been watching Critical Role, a lot of it would be a complete surprise to you. Now, what I will say in terms of character creation is that Matthew has gone to a lot of trouble to get people to construct a number of character creation tables, and they're awesome. They cover all sorts of different aspects in terms of what would make up a character. It reminds me of some of the surveys that used to be put out in terms of character creation that dungeon masters could access online, and you would ask them a variety of different questions, like what is your favorite food? Who in your family is still alive? Who do you have a strong connection with within the party or group that you're traveling with? All those sorts of things. But it goes on because there's multiple pages and multiple tables, and it really does do a pretty extensive job of covering those sorts of things. So it's a very good section as far as I'm concerned. Now we've got some subclasses, which I was actually quite shocked by. And I will discuss them, I guess, relatively briefly, but we do need to put some time into them because he has put in a fighter and 2 wizards. And I'm a fan of wizards. I don't really play fighters very much, but I don't even think this fighter feels like a fighter. It feels more like a fighter wizard, almost like a fighter wizard. There's something much more going on here than meets the eye. Okay, all right. So the first off is the Echo Knight. It's a subclass. It's very unique. It looks very strange, very peculiar. But it's easily the strongest fighter subclass in Dungeons & Dragons 5e. I was looking at it and I was thinking, I don't really like this. This is a bit weird. Oh, I don't know about that. And then you look at it again, and then you look at it again, and you do a bit of research, and then you start to realize just what is going on. I don't think that this thing was really play tested because it really is the strongest fighter. And for people who do not like playing a fighter, an Echo Knight is something that they probably would play because of the tactical things you can do with it and the utility options available to you. And you will get a better idea. I think Trent Monk and other people who have done videos on the Echo Knight can explain this better than I can. It's a very hard subclass to use successfully in a game, I would say. There are certain things you can do that are, pretty standard or pretty obvious to most people, but to do it really successfully in a game, I think would be quite hard. But it has a lot of potential in terms of utility, and it has a lot of potential in combat. So in and out of combat, there's a huge amount of potential there. What it requires is, this subclass requires somebody who's very skilled, quite clever, thinks out of the circle or the box, and is a creative problem solver to get the most out of the subclass in terms of its utility function and the tactical use on the battlefield. I don't know that we will see anybody sort of put out anything that will show the full potential of this subclass. It is one of those things that I think will take years for people to figure out, if they ever do. Just because the low-level features are pretty good, and the mid-level features are really good, and then I don't worry too much about the high-level stuff because you're probably never going to get there anyway, so who cares? But, low-level and mid-level, that's probably where you want your key features that do what you want them to do. And being able to sort of create a shadow or echo of yourself that you can move around the battlefield and that you can use to attack from, and that you can, essentially teleport or move to, change places, move to that space. that makes a big difference in terms of how you maneuver and move and scout and fight. Okay, I've said enough about the Echo Knight. And what do I think about it? Yeah, is it the sort of thing I would ban at my table? I don't know that I would ban it from my table. Do you know why? I don't think that players would understand how to use it fully anyway. So I don't think I have to worry about that sort of thing. So I would still say it is probably one of the strongest fighters out there. And I wouldn't worry too much about it, frankly, because, wizards are OP. Doesn't matter what subclass you're playing, so who cares? Okay, so now let's talk about the two wizards. There's the Time Wizard. I'm going to just call it the Time Wizard. It's very good at low levels for combat and non-combat applications. Oh my gosh, the sorts of things that you can do with this is just amazing. And then at level 10, the Wizard subclass feature breaks the game completely. The fact that you can... I looked at it and I just could not get my head around that 10th level feature. I realised I didn't understand it. And then I had to go and do some research to find out how it worked. And oh my gosh, now you can cast Lehman's Tiny Hut, hold on to it, release it in the middle of a combat, make sure that everybody's in the Lehman's Tiny Hut, and you can just shoot out of the thing, because that's what you can do. Nobody can get in, unless of course they dig underneath it, but they can't shoot into the Lehman's Tiny Hut. You have essentially put yourself in a fortified location that's virtually impregnable unless somebody uses dispel magic or something like counterspell to stop you from doing that, which that might be possible. Even though you're holding the spell, you might be able to counterspell it. I think that would be reasonable to do. But it definitely completely breaks the game. And it's bad enough that wizards are strong, but this is really strong. The ability for this subclass to affect all D20 dice rolls, it doesn't matter whether it's an attack roll, an ability check, a saving throw, the fact that you can affect them, that is a really good feature. And then the ability to boost your initiative. Initiative is an important aspect of Dungeons and Dragons 5e because combats are usually quite short, between 1 and 3 rounds, and you're usually done, unless somebody tricks things up and really tries to drag everything out. It's an amazing mechanic. I don't dislike that mechanic, but I would say the 10th level feature is just gone a little bit too far. Hence why I've been saying that I don't think a lot of the stuff got play tested. I honestly think that they didn't play test anything. But anyway, that is beside the point. So this wizard is seriously overpowered, crazy abilities, and yes, I would probably ban it from my table. I just don't think that I would let that take place at my table, because I don't think I could contend with that. It would just make things too difficult. And it's all very well saying, okay, but if you're restricting players' options and the things that they can do, all you need to do is just change the way you run the game. Well, the fact is that's actually more work. So I've always had a philosophy of I want my players to create less work for me, okay, rather than create more work. If I'm having to work, I'm already working hard enough, so they need to create less work for me. This subclass has really gone too far. And it should have been play tested, I think, before it was released. But everything in here is generally a surprise if it's new stuff. Okay, the Gravity Wizard. I'm just going to call it the Gravity Wizard. It's a very unique concept. And, both of the wizards are. Frankly, all of the subclasses are. It's got some interesting abilities at low level, but it's generally underpowered and I would say a little bit complex for what it's doing. Wizards are complex enough, but some of those spells, when you read them, they're really hard to get your head around. And I don't think that they sort of lend themselves to being particularly useful. Those features for the Gravity Wizard, yeah, they're not for me. I would not pick a Gravity Wizard. I wouldn't restrict the use of a Gravity Wizard in my game. I don't think that there's a problem. I would say it's kind of average-ish. In fact, I might even say that it's kind of less than average. But that's sort of beside the point. I'm sure there's somebody out there who can figure out how to run this particular subclass and do it well. Okay, let's talk about the spells. Now, reading through the spells, I was sort of hit by the fact that these spells are not spells you can just use with any wizard. They have to be used by our gravity wizard and our time wizard, essentially. They offer a mixed bag of really poor spells and very situational spells. And I'm not happy with that. The vast majority of them are quite poor or situational. And I mean, spells often are situational, but good spells are not. They are things that you'll use over and over again. Given the understanding that there are 3 pillars of play: combat, exploration, and social interactions. And if those spells are hitting those markers, we're all good. But I think these ones go too far towards the situational, in my opinion. There is an exception, I would have to say, in terms of the spells. Magnify Gravity is by far the best level 1 spell in Dungeons & Dragons 5e. Okay. Alright, so we can now affect an area and we can do a lot more damage than we could before with anything else. So that's a very, very powerful spell. Would I restrict its use in the game? And I was thinking about this, and I'm not sure. I do not know. There are a lot of really good level 1 spells already, and Magnify Gravity is sort of gone right to the top. But I don't know if I would restrict it. I'm still on the fence about that, so I can't give you any sort of feedback on that. Now, what I will say is that the time and gravity spells are very complex, much like, I would say, the Gravity Wizard subclass. They're a bit confusing at times, a lot of these spells that they can cast, and I really think that they needed some of the input from the design team. I think Wizards of the Coast design team needed to have a good look at them, get them play tested, make sure that everything was working the way it was supposed to be working, and that once they went into a printed product, they weren't going to be sort of just too odd. There are too many spells here that you probably would not use in your game, even though they fit the flavor for your time and gravity wizard. And I think that's kind of a shame, because the idea is you have spells that you will use rather than you won't use. And there's too many here that you just will never use. Okay, so I am always shocked. The book is huge, but I am always shocked when I see something that surprises me in terms of what Wizards of the Coast does in terms of campaign books. And I've had a lot of shocks from this book, but here's another one. And that is, this might be the only time I've ever seen a Dungeons & Dragons 5e Wizards of the Coast campaign book that includes 4 starting adventures. There are 4 starting adventures in this campaign book. Oh my gosh. They're all very different. What are the quality of these adventures? I would say that most of them are actually quite average. I wouldn't say that they sort of stand out in terms of quality. Okay? But there are parts of them that are very simple enough for a beginner dungeon master to use. Then other parts of these adventures really require an intermediate dungeon master skill level. You probably won't want to be a beginner dungeon master for some sections. So you could pull whole sections of the adventures, pull them apart and take the parts that are going to be easy for you to use. And you would probably be perfectly fine because of the way they have been laid out, where they have a map, they have a header, a very short paragraph on that section, so you don't have to sort of remember too much stuff. It's easy to reference, it's easy to write notes on, and there's not too many surprises. You're not having to jump around to try and find stuff. So those are all elements and aspects of the Lost Mine of Phandelver and Dragon of Icespire Peak. So, but there's not a single adventure here, unfortunately, that from beginning to end is suitable for a beginner dungeon master. There's parts of them, because usually they have more than one part, these adventures. That's another thing, is these adventures aren't short. They're quite extensive. They There's quite a bit of material there. Okay, so it might take a little while to get through them. Not all of them are like that, but I would say the vast majority of them. So, Matthew Mercer, you get a big 2 thumbs up for getting Wizards of the Coast to put 4 starting adventures in a campaign book. I think that's a marvellous thing to have achieved. And probably, I think Matthew Mercer's the only one who could ever do that. I don't think anybody else could pull it off. But he's got enough clout, and so does Critical Role. There is a vast number of very clever, powerful magic items from common to artifact level to plunder for your campaign in this book. Now, some of them are really strange, and they just they feel fairly standard. The magic weapons, blah blah blah. There's magic armor or stuff like that, and then there's some other items that are kind of very peculiar. That do things that you think, well, does that really need to be a magic item? But look, some of these magic items reminds me of Harry Potter and some of the things that the wizards could do there. Really simple stuff like day-to-day magic that you probably wouldn't use for battle or holding back nations or stuff like that. Or hordes of monsters. They're very sort of simple in their approach. I like that. I think that's a good thing to put into a game, and they've got them here. But that's not all. There's more to this than that. Surprisingly, the surprises don't stop with this guy. He keeps going. So what have we got here? We've got this brilliant development here of the vestiges of divergence. Okay, now the vestiges of divergence incorporates the idea of magic items evolving and changing or growing when a player character's advance in some way. Now they have to advance their personal journey rather than their character level. It's not really based around their character level, and I think that's actually smarter than what I've done in the past. I've always thought that it was much better to have a magic item, particularly magic weapons, where you don't keep trading them out for something better because you're a higher level. Rather than approaching it like a video game, where I've got a +1 sword or a weapon, and now I've leveled up and I'm at the next tier. Well, I need to ditch the level 1 or +1 weapon, and I need a +2 weapon. Well, if the thing grows and changes with the player's character, that means they're probably not going to want to give it up, and they're not going to trade it out, and you don't have to worry about dropping more and more magic items to satisfy the drug, which is magic items for players. And that's the reality. That it's the crack and drug of Dungeons and Dragons for players, magic items. So this is really brilliant stuff, and it gives you some guidance around it. I wouldn't say that it explains to you how to build your own, but based on what is there, there's so many examples. Okay, there are so many different items that operate this way, that are vestiges of divergence, that you could pluck and pull and put them together and make your own thing. And because they're all in one place, that wouldn't be very hard to do. It even gives you some guidance about some of the things that a player character might have to do to achieve a change or evolution of that magic item. Okay, so that is really useful stuff. It's just I would say is it half a page? I would say it's less than half a page and a box text that explains how to advance the magic item based on the character and the things that character's doing. Pardon me, I've got gas. So, I like this idea the most. I think this is brilliant, and I think this is the sort of thing that dungeon masters should be looking at trying to do, rather than trying to continue the constant array of magic items to keep up with the desire to have something more powerful than they had before. So that is the one, and I've used it in my game, and I tell you, it works so well. And I think this is the first time we've really seen this. I think that's the first time we've seen the concept of magic items that evolve and grow with the player character. And so Matthew is definitely on the cutting edge, maybe not with everything that he's made, but he's definitely on the cutting edge when it comes to design ideas And this is awesome. And I would also like to point out that a lot of those magic items, extra features that they develop over time, they're not always combat focused. They are not always combat focused. It's not just about hitting better, doing more damage, putting on conditions to monsters. No, it does. They do lots of different things. So, hooray! Let's go on to the next section. Now, this is my favourite section because I like monsters. Now, they've got it listed down as the Beastery. I'm going to call it the Beastery, as in I'm from New Zealand and not from North America, so I'm going to be spelling it Beastiary, okay? Because that makes more sense to me rather than Beastery. It's a beastery for me. It's a beast section. It is generally full of monsters. I would say a small range of modified monsters from the monster manual. There's not a lot there, and they are modified, and they're usually based on existing monsters. There are a couple that are sort of slightly unique, but I feel like they have been pulled from older versions of Dungeons and Dragons and modified, which is fine. That's what Dungeon Masters do. What I will say about the monsters in this section is they're far more interesting, what they do. There's a lore section for almost all of them. Not a huge section, but they've really tried to get as much in there as they possibly can. And I would say that these stat blocks are significantly more dangerous than things you would find in the monster manual. And I like that. It's one of the things you do notice when Matthew Mercer is running a game on the Critical Role live stream, is that his monsters are pretty brutal. They are tough. But then again, he gives his players lots of stuff, lots of cool things. And their characters are quite powerful. So he has not really held back. Now, one of the things that's really interesting about this is damage immunity. A lot of the monsters don't have damage resistance. That can be circumvented by having a magical weapon. No, that doesn't happen. No, instead, damage immunity seems to be the standard that he's using. That means it doesn't matter if you have a magic weapon. This thing is just got damage immunity to whatever damage type has been put down. And usually monsters don't have damage immunity to every type of damage type. Okay? That's not how these stat blocks are built. He's very specific. He picks the ones that he thinks are going to work. I like that a lot. And this is definitely a recurring theme in all of the monsters. The fact that there is very little use of damage resistance and more use of damage immunity. And I think, frankly, that Dungeon Masters should do this more themselves. I think you should probably look at some of the monsters you are running in your own games, because this is a really good example of the sorts of things. I mean, Matthew Mercer's very, very forward thinking. He's obviously played the game enough, understands what's going on, and what he's done is he's done what we probably should have all been doing, and that is taking existing monsters in the monster manual, and if they don't have too many damage resistances, turning that damage resistance into damage immunity to really get around the fact that magic items, as soon as you got a magic item, you can do full damage on that creature no matter what. No matter what. And I think that's probably part of the problem. Damage resistance is one of the mechanics in monsters that I don't find it satisfying. I find it quite annoying, frankly. I think the use of damage resistance there's too much of it, and there's not enough use of damage immunity. So Matthew is just giving you an example of the sorts of things I think you should do to your own monsters in your game. Get rid of damage resistance and put in damage immunity, provided they don't have too many damage resistances. Alright, now that I've gone on about how awesome I think the idea of getting rid of damage resistances and keeping damage immunity is the key, that's the focus, I would also say that often attacks or monster abilities inflict a secondary damage type. There's not just one damage type taking place. When a monster strikes, hits, or whether you do a saving throw or an attack roll with that monster, there's usually secondary damage types, which is awesome. That means it's not doing just one type of damage. And also, often there's a condition that is imparted on the by the monster onto the player's character. And this is something that I think we really needed to see in a lot of the monsters in the monster manual. And I really like this feature. It reminds me of the Tome of Beasts by Kobold Press. Now, Kobold Press, a lot of the names of the monsters in Kobold Press aren't that, I mean, they don't make a lot of sense. I struggle to even pronounce any of them. The lore is awesome, and the mechanics, the stat blocks are brutal and incredible, and they really make that monster sort of stand out. It's not just a bag of hit points to be disposed of and collect XP for, okay, and then loot the body. So the fact that he's put in conditions and additional damage types that these monsters will do, I really like. I think that's awesome, and it would be so nice. Do you know what I would really like to see? I would like to see Matthew Mercer sit down with the design team and make a second monster manual. I think that would work really well. Although I would also like Mr. Rex and AJ Pickett to sit down with the design team to do the lore, and then get Matthew to sit down with them and just change the way monsters work mechanically for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. I think that would be my dream. I think that would work really well. I think he's got a really good understanding of how that sort of thing should happen. And I'm sure AJ will tell me that he's got a lot of really cool ideas in terms of mechanics as well. Anyway, moving on, there is a pull-out poster map of Wildemount. It's excellent. For what you got, it's only single-sided. There's only one map. I feel that's a big, huge shame. I am a little sad that Wizards of the Coast goes to all this effort to produce maps on one side when they could have printed another map on the other side just to make it more useful to you, rather than have a single-sided map. That's not to say the map isn't useful, because it's a map of Wildemount, so the whole continent is laid out before you, and it's relatively detailed. So that's a useful thing for a dungeon master, because you can then lay that out for the players to see, particularly if you're playing at the table. And I know a lot of you won't be playing at a table, you'll be playing online, but that will hopefully change for some people, okay, and relatively soon. But the map is excellent. We just needed two maps, one on both sides. And what would be the map on the other side? Well, it could have been a collection of, could be 4 different maps, smaller ones that you could just sort of fold into the right shape and use. And they have plenty of maps in the book that would have easily been transferable onto the back of this poster map. And they didn't do that. And frankly, I don't think it would have added that much of an extra cost to the book. I know the book probably cost them a lot to make because it's so big, but I just feel like it was a lost opportunity. And so I reckon that Matthew Mercer probably wanted them to put something on the back of the map, and they probably said, no, it's getting too expensive, Matthew, you got to back off. I think that's probably what happened. Speculation on my part. Anyway, let's talk about the art. There's a mixture of art in this book of maps that you will find useful, whether you're playing this campaign or not. Some, of course, not all of them. If you're playing through this campaign setting, then absolutely the maps there are very good. There's a lot of pretty pictures as well. I'm not so much too concerned. I feel this book is very heavy on text. Okay, that's not necessarily a bad thing with a campaign book. The pretty pictures, did I feel like it added enough to what I was seeing, or did it break up the page so we didn't just get walls of text? And I don't know that I mean, the art's all right. But I will say, and I did notice, for those of you who may or may not have realised, some of the artwork that they have put in here is reproductions. They are older pieces of art that have come from different products that Wizards of the Coast put out for Dungeons & Dragons 5e, and they've reprinted them in here, rather than original art. I guess we can't win everything. Okay, so, yes. Why do you do this, Wizards of the Coast? You're going to make a new product, it's going to sell you a lot of books. They sold a lot of these books. Why would you do that? I just don't get it. So what I want to say is, Matthew Mercer has not let Wizards of the Coast take shortcuts with this book. There really aren't shortcuts taken with this book. I mean, I would say yes, the map on the back, poster map, a shortcut, yes. But as a general rule, this book has been done right. It's been done the way it should have been done. And frankly, I don't think it would have been done this way unless Matthew Mercer was as famous as he is and he had the pull and push of Critical Role behind him. Because anybody else, the Eberron book, when I look at the Eberron book in terms of its layout, and the Eberron book's a good book, but it is as good and as well laid out as this. I don't know that it is. Does it present some ideas that really push the boundaries with Dungeons and Dragons 5e? I don't really feel that Eberron does, and that would be another, even the Forgotten Realms, right? And we don't really have a Forgotten Realms book or campaign book. We could talk about the Sword Coast Adventurers Guide, but I'm not going to. Leave that alone, please. I think this has done a very good job of presenting some very significant alterations to a game that needed alterations, and I highly recommend this book if you are a fan of Matthew Mercer's Exandria or Wildemount world, you're a fan of Critical Role and you like the idea of running a campaign in this world. If you're not, then there's a lot of the book that you won't use. I mean, frankly, it probably wouldn't be the book to use, but the ideas behind it are really, really interesting. And you could certainly poach a lot of the ideas about the monsters and how they're built, how magic items are built, even their character creation tables in there would be useful. Would it be worth you buying it if you're not a Critical Role fan? Probably not. But that's not because the book isn't good. Okay, all right. I have covered this as much as I think I need to. If you found this useful, fantastic. I'm glad. I have enjoyed having a chat. I know it's been a long discussion on my part. I've talked and talked and talked and talked, but it needed to be said. And there was a lot to say because it's a big book. So if you found this video useful, fantastic. You'll find hundreds of videos for players and dungeon masters on my channel. You're welcome to go and check those out. If you want to support the channel so I keep doing video content like this, you can through Patreon, the Amazon affiliate links down in the description, the merchandise shelf underneath all of my videos, or just watch my videos, that's fine too. Make sure to share, like and subscribe, hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. And we're back. Okay. I haven't really left myself very much time to actually answer questions and talk through that in the chat. I'm going to lose my voice, which I can't afford to do because I'm on the Dungeon Master Roundtable today, and if I lose my voice, it's going to be a very problem. It's a big problem because I'm hosting as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in here #question because I'm probably going to skim read everything rather than read everything. So if you have a specific question, fire it away. What have I done there? I've done something strange. #question dot please, and then we'll punch that in, we'll pin it, and then I'll go through the chat, and I'm probably not going to be able to hang around for too long. I do apologise that it took so long to get through. I do apologise. Normally I give you much more time to actually discuss stuff, and I haven't done that today. Hi Elliot, how's it going? Elliot Roberts. Alright, sorry this has nothing to do with the stream specifically. That's alright. Questions and answers don't have to do with the stream. Elliot, anybody can ask me anything within reason, of course. It doesn't have to be related to the stream. But okay, what is this? But I want to say thank you so much for all of your help. Okay, Lost Mine of Fandelver. Man, I tell you, the people who thank me for the help that I've done in terms of the videos I've done on Lost Mine of Fandelver and the help they've got from there and the ideas, you guys are awesome, you know? You've really, you guys have changed the way my channel works. As a result of doing those Lost Mine of Fandelver videos, even some of the Dragon of Icespire Peak videos, but certainly the Lost Mine of Fandelver videos, you guys are the ones who thank me the most. and it's meant that I have been able to steer my channel away from making videos about just the core mechanics of Dungeons and Dragons and mechanics full stop, and onto something that frankly I found far more interesting, and you guys really have been just awesome. Now that's not to say that I don't get really good feedback from people about some of the mechanical videos that I've made, because I do, but yeah, consistently over time it's the people who've been running through the Lost Mine of Phandelver. Luna Foxfire, hello. Yeah, it has been a while. Leon Gannett, it's been ages, man. I haven't seen you for so long. I'm surprised you found this one, because YouTube made it unlisted. I said it as public and they turned it to listed, unlisted. Wonderful. Yeah, I haven't had any interest in this book, but I'm guessing Fred will change my mind. No, I don't think I will change your mind, Slice of Scott. Frankly, I don't think I will. Unless you are interested in the Critical Role Exandria world, Wildemount is probably not the book for you. But some of the ideas in there will be very useful to you. And you don't need to buy the book to get those ideas, because you know as well as I do, as I'm probably going to make a video on those concepts in the future. If I haven't already made a video on those concepts, you just haven't seen it or found it. Does that make sense? Okay. Fender. Now Fender is a patron on Patreon. Hello Fender, how's it going? Hello Nick. The Echo Knight is lovely. I think the Tasha's fighter are equivalent in power, but it's so fun to play. I don't know. I think that I frankly don't think that people will fully understand how to play an Echo Knight, just because of the sort of things you can do with it. Okay, I could be wrong. I know a lot of stuff in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, whether it be a fighter or any other subclass, they're all very, very powerful. Anyway. Moving through here as quickly as we can, because we need to actually respond. Hi Matt Nerdy, how's it going? Phoenix Rapunzel. I've never tried an Echo Knight. I'd be up for trying it out. Yeah. Dungeon Dudes ranked the 2 wizards subclasses in this book, and they also said the chronurgy wizard abilities were crazy. Yeah, they are. They are, absolutely. Luna Foxfire, what do you got here? The divine, yeah, I know what you're talking about. The divine wizard. Look, even the divine wizard school can't do Lehman's tiny hut in the middle of combat. And there's another subclass that has potential to do that as well. I don't think people have picked up on it yet. And that's the Order of Scribes. There's a feature in there, and once you get it, I'm pretty sure you could do that in combat. And when people figure that out, the Order of Scribes will be considered one of the more broken wizards. And of course, all wizards are broken. They're more powerful than everything else. Okay. That is by design. That is totally intended, by the way. Okay, what do you got here, Fender? I have played a chronurgy wizard and it was just absurd. Yeah. No, you wouldn't have to play optimal with the time wizard. It wouldn't be necessary, not at all. What do you got here, Matt? I'm 100% positive Wizards of the Coast play tested the Beastmaster and Ranger from the player's handbook. Yeah, I doubt that. I don't think they did really. Yeah. To be fair, do you know, I think people give the Ranger a hard time. I really like the Ranger, because every time I've seen a Ranger played in my game, they have dominated the table. They haven't dominated combat in terms of damage output unless they're a Gloomstalker. If they're a Gloomstalker, my gosh. But the player's handbook options, when I've seen them played, they always dominate when it comes to exploration, and most adventures are very much about exploration. If it's their favoured terrain, they're in. They're definitely in. And they can do things that don't require them to roll dice. They just do it. There's no chance of failure. It just happens. Those are the sorts of features I like more than things where you have a chance for failure. And I'm not a power gamer or an optimizer in any case, so it's not like I'm thinking in that way. Okay, Nick, what do you got here? I think a chronurgy wizard player has to promise not to try to break the game. Yeah, that's not going to happen. I think that you, I think if you're going to let it be played, it's going to happen for sure. Now, where might it work better? What if you had a chronurgy wizard player character, but they were having to battle time wizards of their own? If the enemies were a bunch of chronurgy wizards themselves that have the abilities that the player character has, now that changes things again. Now then you could do it, and it would be fine. It would be so complex for a dungeon master. Your head would probably explode and pop right off trying to deal with all of that, because that would be very complicated. What do you got here, Matt Nerdy? I have so many books to buy now, it's ridiculous. Yeah, as a result, I probably should stop doing book reviews, right? And then you wouldn't have this problem. But I know you guys have been wanting me to actually talk about these books, so I'm doing so, okay? And I'm being as honest as I possibly can. Yeah. Halfling Time Wizard. That's the one. White Rhino's got the right idea. Mr. C, how's it going? I've been highly enjoying writing for an adventure in Wildemount. The book is amazing. Good. So clearly this campaign appeals to you. The Tome of Beasts 2 is absolutely brilliant. Now, I haven't actually looked at that book because I haven't bought it. I plan to. I just haven't got around to doing that. For those of you who are here, my plan is to pay off my house in 3 years, and the 4th year, put enough money away to do the renovations on my house, fix it all up, sell it, and move away to somewhere much more isolated, and do this YouTube thing, not full-time, but a bit more than I do it now. So as a result, I'm trying not to spend too much money. It's hard. Trying to pay off a mortgage that should be taking me 15 years to pay off in 3 years is like crazy stuff. Anyway, hence why I haven't really bought everything I could. Hi, Chase. One of the issues is the other continent is copyright by a different company from, Taldori book, yes. Yeah, it would be problematic. I would imagine that would cause a bit of a hassle. Okay. Fender, you guys are chatting about campaigns and inspiration, reworking the setting. Yes, you could certainly rework the setting. Yes, they did use fan art. A lot of the art is fan art, and that was supposed to be a big deal. I guess for me, when it comes to something like subclasses and races, fan art makes sense. I guess for me, the world stuff, as a dungeon master, I feel like images of the world aren't nearly as important as maps. There are still a lot of maps in here. And then I think that's the thing that struck me the most. If you got monsters, you want pictures of monsters. That's cool. I don't have an issue with the art style changing. I don't frankly have an issue with the art that's there. I just feel like if you're going to have, art in the book around the world sections, like the gazetter and Wildemount and stuff like that, I feel like maps are probably the thing that, as a dungeon master, you'll use the most. That's the only thing I would say. Yeah. Okay. Matt, what do you got here? Blackmore campaign. Oh, okay. All right. You're welcome, by the way, Phoenix Rapunzel. Hopefully it was useful to you in some way. And hopefully if you hung around to the very end, seriously, you should start looking at changing the way you use or create magic items and making adjustments to your monsters. Ganges, how's it going? The only gist is if you're a Critical Role fan, you'll like the Wildemount. Well, I mean, you can see it that way, but I think that's an honest opinion of the book. I think it's a good book, but probably you're not necessarily going to be drawn to this book unless you are a Critical Role fan. Yeah, no, absolutely, I agree, Nick. A lot of the other people do I mean, he had a lot of help. He tried to, I mean, Matthew tried to do it all himself, and it just wasn't going to work. So James, both Jameses, Chris, yep, absolutely. They did, absolutely. And Matthew did acknowledge that they worked very hard putting it all together. Okay. Rhetorical question. Yes, okay, all right. Well met. So this is Rex Fellis. Hopefully I got your name right. No, that's not true, Matt. There will be more teaching modules. There will be more teaching modules. I'm just trying to get through all of this stuff. You wouldn't believe how hard I've been working recently. It wouldn't look like it in terms of the release of videos on my channel. I have enough videos currently uploaded to my channel that haven't been released for in half a year. Half a year. That's how many. There's a lot. So I've been working my butt off and trying to get through a lot of this stuff because I realized I'd let things go and I didn't know how to solve that problem. So now I'm just working harder, but also trying to work smarter, which means taking shortcuts that I haven't used before. Okay, Phoenix Rapunzel, you have a question. Thoughts on doing a video on Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft and how to incorporate it as either its own campaign or along with the Curse of Strahd. Phoenix Rapunzel, when the book arrives in my hands, because I'm in New Zealand and it's going to take a while to get to me, you will get a live stream video and you will get some video content around this, and we may shift my monthly discussion around Curse of Strahd to Ravenloft. And so it would be broader. It wouldn't just cover the Curse of Strahd. It would be more a discussion about what you could do with Ravenloft. I don't know at this point how that will look because I haven't run anything from that book yet. And I don't like to do that sort of thing unless I've got some experience behind it. But one thing I can do is I can sit down while I'm on the toilet, driving to work, in my breaks, sitting in my bed, watching TV, trying to go to sleep. I can come up with ideas or a list of ideas around a specific section of that book. That's something I can do, and I've done pretty well in the past. So that's probably something you will see. So if you thought you weren't going to see anything from Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, absolutely that's not true. You will definitely see something, okay? McLovin, how's it going? I'm DMing Rise of Tiamat, and a friend and I are playing an Echo Knight. We are at level 8, and so far, so good. I bet it is. I don't think you... Yes, consider your options. There are lots of things you could do outside of the square that really will change how that plays. Okay, Fendar, what do you got here? I have been wanting to play a ranger lately. I feel they just got a bad rap. Yeah, it's because they don't do a lot of damage compared to the other classes. Unless, of course, you're a Gloomstalker. If you're a Gloomstalker and you do the right build, you do more damage than most other single target characters. My Gloomstalker in my game, the person playing that Gloomstalker, kills everything very, very fast. I have to change everything significantly because of him. Okay. Yes, they are one of the most reliable classes. Absolutely, I do agree. I know, but the problem is, if I did a video and said Rangers are actually awesome, I don't think anybody would believe me or watch the video. Okay, Leon Gunnett, what do you got here? Question. So how much correction and curtation of harmful language is in Van Richten's? I don't know. I know what you're talking about. Are you talking about the woke thing and the social justice warrior stuff? See, for me, I'm in New Zealand. I just don't understand what's going on. I just see it as politically correct stuff. And I come from a nation of that's a social welfare nation. You know, where we look after each other as best we can. And that's how our culture is built. They are trying to change it, but that's where we're at. That's the nature of our culture. And I would hope that we keep that. But I don't know. I've never been very politically correct. If anything, I tend to poke fun at that sort of thing. If you really want to get into that sort of stuff, you've got to deal with the real topics. And I don't think anybody talks about the real issues. Anyway, can I read without cringing? Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. I haven't seen it. If I cringe when I'm reading through it, you'll know, because I'll tell you for sure. I'll be blunt. I'm like a sledgehammer, sometimes to the side of the head. By the way, I'm going to DM Lost Mine of Findelver first session this Saturday, so let's see if my players survive their first goblin encounter. Well, I've done enough videos on that particular scenario that you should be able to work your way through that without finding it all come crashing down around you. Anyway, the last. Power Creep is going to destroy 5th edition. It's done that with everything. Version 3, 3.5, version 4, version 5. You've got to remember, they're the same company making this game. It hasn't changed anything. I think with the lack of Mike Merles, I think things have definitely gone off the rails a bit. I think because Mike Merles is not steering the helm anymore, we are heading into the same old territory we've always been in, the same place, because that's what they feel sells books, and they're probably right. But yes, when the movie comes out, the version of Dungeons and Dragons will change. Okay, whether it's a version 5.5 or version 6, as soon as that movie comes out, I've said it before, the version will change. Hi Nick, how's it going? Late to the stream, but thanks Fred, I'll be watching it later. Can't wait to watch the content, although I love the comment section of your videos. Really? I know you're down in the comment sections quite a bit. I mean, a lot of people don't comment on my videos anymore. Do you know why? I think it's because you get to interact with me live. I'm here every week, so it's going to happen. Okay, Luna, what do you got here? Thread, I'm thinking of making a cleric, but making the domain a homebrew. That's the T domain. Ha 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 ha! You do it. Do it. That is funny as. Ziggy 7800 Pro. My daughter played an Echo Knight and loved it. I want to play one myself sometime. I bet you do. It really is. I mean, I still feel it's a very hard subclass to play well, but you could still do a reasonable job, even if you're not too sure how it works. Okay, question from Taylor, and then I've got to get going because I've got to go and set up the Zoom chat for AJ, Josh, Josiah, and Mark from Dungeon Class. So I got Dungeon Dad, AJ Pickett, and Dungeon Class today. So yes, we've got stuff to talk about. We're talking about the Dungeon Master's Guide, and a few rules. Anyway, your question, Taylor. I'm currently DMing in Mythic Odysseys, of Theros campaign. How do you settle out of game conflicts with your players, getting into the arguments over what the best? Okay, right. So stop right there, Taylor. Look. I know some people like to talk about issues with players away from the table, away from the group. Just talk to them at the table with the group, okay? If they're adults, they'll be able to deal with it. And you just go through the issues and explain. And if they're happy with that, you move on and you're done. And if they are immature and they can't deal with it, they will either throw a tantrum and leave or throw a tantrum and stay and probably get a bit quiet. You got to, everything comes down to you just have to talk to them. You just have to tell them what the issues are, and then you go from there. And there's a reason why I do not do videos on how to deal with problem players, because the only advice that I have for you is talk to them. That's it. It doesn't get any more complicated than that. Otherwise, you'll wind up watching all these blooming videos on YouTube and everywhere else giving you advice on 100 different things that you can do, or 1,000 or 10 or 5. I mean, it's just talk to them. That's it. All right. Okay, Fender, question. Would you let your players pick what campaign is being played in the group out of a selection you made for them? Yes, I do that. That's exactly what I do. I give them a selection of things that I would like to do, that I would be willing to do, and they pick what they want. And that's what they've kind of done. They had said they do not want the Forgotten Realms, but I've been taking them all over the place. My current campaign, we've done Forgotten Realms, we've gone Undermountain, we've gone to Midgard, we've gone to Celestia, we've gone to the Pathfinder world, Galorian, I think it's called Galorian. Yeah, and we'll keep going other places, all over the place. So shake it up. That's what they want, so that's what they're going to get. And I am happy to do that. It's not that hard. Frankly, usually players don't ask you that many questions about the world anyway, so it's not a big deal. Matt Nerdy, you're welcome, Matt. Okay. Adriana, hi, I just wanted to say that I love your videos. Thank you. Adriana, I think I got your name right. They're so helpful, especially for new DMs. I'm going to do, the Dragon of Ice by a Peak on Sunday, and I'm going to use your military garrison adventure hook. Good one. That's the one to go for. Absolutely. What's next week? I think next week we're talking about Dragon of Ice by a Peak. Probably going to be Exholm. I was going to talk about the adventures after Dragon of Ice by a Peak next week, and then I looked at it and I thought, no, I'm not. I said I would to somebody, and I was like, no, I'm going to do Exholm, because we need to talk about that particular little quest, that little location, that little hive of problems. So yeah, that'll be what we discuss next week. Okay, what do you got here, Leon Gunnett? 60 is going to be all about point buy, skills, feats, features, traits, 4 foot tall half orcs, half dragon fighters, wizard daddy issues. Okay. All right. I get your point. Look, I was talking to AJ Pickett, Dungeon Dad, Josiah, and I was talking to Jordan, and they were saying like they expect Wizards of the Coast to change the lore and the stories, the lore behind monsters and the worlds completely for the next version of Dungeons and Dragons. And they were all laughing because they're like, well, okay, we guess we just have to start all over again. I thought that was hilarious. Anyway, we have done what we need to do, and I need to go and get organised for these guys, because I need to give them some time to actually set up as well. And I'm going to lose my voice, which would be terrible. So we don't want to do that. We want to avoid losing my voice if possible. So thank you to everybody who showed up. Thank you to my patrons. Thank you for hanging out with me for so long. It's a long live stream, just over an hour. And wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, the early morning, the night? Did I say night? I said one of those. I mean, wherever you are, whatever time it is, please look after yourself, your family, your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.